Man, it seems like all I ever do is edit video. I need a break today. Wonder if Alexa's got any ideas. Alexa, I'm tired of editing video. What else can I do today?
You can always get out the gold wing and go for a ride.
Hey, good idea. Alexa, do I have any crashes scheduled for today?
Haha, with your amazing road skills and road strategy, you don't have to worry about any crashes today.
Oh, that's good. How about any close calls?
There are no close calls scheduled for at least 6 months. You can leave your riding gear at home.
Hey, that's awesome. Did you hear that? I don't have any crashes scheduled for today, and I won't even have a close call for at least 6 months. I can leave that riding gear at home. And wouldn't it be nice if we could schedule our close calls on a motorcycle? Or even better yet, if we had a personal assistant that would tell us when we're going to have a crash. If you had to ride your motorcycle today and you knew you were going to have a crash, how much protective gear would you wear? Would you choose a full face helmet, maybe a shell helmet, or would you just ride with no helmet at all? Well, I believe that protective gear is a personal decision. I think that a lot of us would make different choices if we knew today would be the day that we were going to have a crash. And over the last few months, I've had a few MCrider supporters reach out and tell me their stories of recent incidents that they've had on a motorcycle. Some were close calls and some were crashes, but they all had one thing in common. The rider had appropriate gear on, and in part because of that, they are here to tell their story today. Road skills, road strategy, and proper gear save lives. The thing is that you have to make the decision to follow these principles before you get on the motorcycle. Like I've said in the past, the time to practice emergency braking is not when the car pulls out in front of you. By then it's too late. Likewise, you can't schedule the crash for a day when you decide to wear your helmet. So let's look at the 3 stories of 3 MCrider supporters who were prepared for what happened to them while they were out on the road. The first video comes from Vince in the UK. He was out for an afternoon ride, and the footage that you're seeing was shot from a car behind Vince on a dash cam, and they agreed to share the footage so that we could learn from it. Now this is Vince. You can see him right here. And as we'll soon see, this is an obviously distracted driver who is behind him. So let's play the video ahead and then we'll stop and we'll talk a little more about what we see. So thank you, Vince, for sending this footage in, and he also sent me some comments that I want to share with you guys as well. So Vince states, I've looked at this accident several times, and the worst thing I did was to get distracted by the car in the driveway and to not make sure the car which had followed me through the village was slowing down properly or at all. She was definitely distracted herself and had taken her eyes off the road. As you can see, there was not any braking or moving to the left. This also highlights the importance of wearing the correct gear. I'd bought myself a new helmet just a few weeks previously to this accident. So I've looked at the footage several times myself, and I can't tell right here if Vince applied the brakes, which may have contributed to the crash. He did state that he was distracted by the car in the driveway, and I can see why that might happen if you think that car might be pulling out in front of you. But in Vince's defense, slowing down on the road does not justify getting hit from the back. So even if he did slow down, the driver is still at fault. My only word of caution for this is to make sure that you're in the habit of looking in the mirrors each time you slow down significantly on a motorcycle. You can't trust that driver behind you to do the right thing. Vince also states that his situational awareness may have been able to help him here had he been aware of what was going on behind him. But this one happened quick, and even the most aware and skilled rider cannot account for all the scenarios out on the road. What they can do is make decisions before they get on a motorcycle that pays huge dividends when something like this happens. For Vince, the decision to buy that new helmet a few weeks prior may very well have saved his life, or at least much worse injuries. Next, let's look at a close call that was sent in by Daryl. Here's Daryl's description of the close call. It says, on review of this video, I noticed several things that directly reflect on your training videos. For me, in hindsight, I should have just kept my following distance without moving past that car. I use this ramp all the time, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary until that moment. You will notice that I slowed down immediately. I realized that the car was moving into my lane without a turn signal. I initiated emergency braking without locking up or losing control, and all while moving over not to make contact with the car. I did notice that I hit the turn signal initially instead of the horn, but recovered immediately. And you will notice that the horn is very loud. It's an air horn, and it got the driver's attention immediately, despite the fact that the bike is very loud in itself. Now, I want to highlight one comment that Daryl made here. He said that the driver still pulled into his lane despite the fact that the bike is very loud too. Now, you'll never see me wearing one of these shirts. I'm not opposed to loudish motorcycles. Man, I like to hear the engine noise too, but if it registers on the Richter scale, it's time to look into a proper exhaust. But the key point here is loud pipes don't save lives. Practicing road skills, having a good road strategy, and wearing protective gear, now that'll save your life. Daryl did a good job here. He avoided the crash, he slowed down, he swerved slightly to the right, and he lived to tell his story. This does bring up an important point though. Remember last week I gave you tips on brand new riders looking to take the MSF class, and one of the tips that I gave you was to practice using the controls of the motorcycle without looking down at them. This is an example of why you need to be able to do that. So even though Daryl's muscle memory initially went to the blinker, he was able to use the horn to help warn the driver and also use his avoidance techniques to stay out of the crash as well. But there was no time in this situation to look down at the controls. He had to look up and use his muscle memory to find out where that horn was. The last rider who sent something in doesn't have a video, but he does have a photo, and sometimes a photo is worth 1,000 words. But before we look at the photo that David shared on the MCrider forums, let's look at two riders here. Both of these riders are wearing full gear. You can at least see they've got a jacket and gloves for both riders, and both riders have a helmet on, but one rider has significantly better protection if they were to be involved in a crash. When riders are involved in a crash, in most instances, there is forward momentum involved. This forward momentum puts the rider's face and chin as very likely targets to hit the pavement. Hitting the pavement and the inevitable slide on your face has some serious consequences. So here's the photo that David shared on the forums. And as you can see from this photo, almost all of the damage is to the face shield of the helmet. If he'd been wearing a 3/4 or a shell helmet or no helmet at all, that damage would have occurred on David's face. Now, I had a crash several years ago and my helmet looked very similar to this. I didn't have a concussion, no abrasions to my head or face. And in fact, I didn't even know my head had contacted the ground until I tried to look through the visor and could tell it was severely scratched and damaged. Now, I had gash marks in the top of the helmet and slide marks, gashes cut into the helmet all the way down to the bottom. So wearing proper gear can help you, but wearing the right type of gear has a big impact on your safety as well. So you may want to consider that next time you're out in the market for protective gear. Buy something that's going to protect your head and face as well. Now, I want to thank these three supporters of MCrider for sharing their stories and allowing us to learn from them. I'm also thankful that in each instance, these riders use their road skills their road strategy, and they were wearing proper gear that kept their situation from being much worse. If you want to get more involved with MCrider, we have a good community of riders on the forums, and it provides a lot of additional learning than what we can provide here on a weekly video. So I hope you'll join us on the forums at mcrider.com/support. And until next week, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road. There are multiple ways to support the channel. You can become a member on YouTube at mcrider.com/member, or support the channel through Patreon at mcrider.com/support. Either way, you'll get full access to the forum and the field guides, which will further the training that we release here on a weekly basis.